Let's work. Turn it down and listen to the experts. Gotta give a shout to the Talking Junk Network. Showing love, hosting battles, playing dope joints. The break room topics always staying on point. Never disappoint. We'll never need a makeover. We here for the takeover like Jehovah. Talking Junk break room takeover. On the podcast, dropping bomb facts on demand like Comcast. Now drop a comment whenever they're going live. Hit the YouTube channel right now and go subscribe. Peace.
Talking Junk Network,
where entertainment lives.
Welcome to Talking Junk.
I'm your host, Jason Melendez.
Live now every week.
Talking Junk.
A multitude of professionals in different aspects, different walks of life.
You have to come on and talk junk like a normal person.
Welcome to Talking Junk. Tonight we have a great guest for you, like always. However, this man is the epitome of the American dream. He is at the moment running for the 2020 presidential race. Let's just bring him in here. The man, he needs no introduction. However, we're going to give him one of the biggest introductions in Talking Junk history. We bring to you your 2024 presidential candidate, Mr. Gene Sticco. How you doing? How's it going, Gene?
Right.
How's everything?
That was good, man. I got to get that sound bite and hold on to that. That was classic right there.
Hey, I'm trying. How you doing tonight? Thank you for gracing us with your presence. I know you're a busy man with the campaign.
Yeah, you can. Thank you. I appreciate the time and the interest, and the opportunity to come on and chat with you, and allow you and the voters out there to get to know me a little bit.
Right. So let's just start there. Why don't we let the potential voters know exactly who Mr. Gene Sticco is? Early on, where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Somerville, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. Grew up in the Winter Hill section, which is famous or infamous for our number one gangster, Whitey Bulger, of the Departed fame of Black Mass. I think was the Johnny Depp. That was my neighborhood growing up. And I went to Catholic school my whole life. 18 years old, left here for the military. Had a good military career of a little over 9 years. Went into the corporate / government contracting world, and probably spent more of my adult life actually living and working outside of the United States. And life led me back here in 2018, back stateside full time. And since then, I've just been I'd retired from my primary career. I got involved. My wife is a professional opera singer, so I got involved in the opera business, and as I say, started living life more creatively, living life more passionately. I always, kept.
You kind of look like an opera guy.
Well, you know what? This was my COVID project, the beard and all that. And I never in my life had facial hair. And I said, okay, well, COVID time, I'm going to let it grow in. And as it started growing in, I noticed, I'm like, there's some patchiness. I said, look, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something wacky with it. So, I went on, looked at all the different beard styles. And I was like, yeah, this kind of, I think it was called the Van Dyke. So it's sort of a combination. I said, yeah, it kind of works. And then with the opera world, and so just started having a good time with it. And it's taken on a life of its own. My wife surprisingly loves it. So as long as that's the number one thing.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks like an old time colonel.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I get I get a lot of historical references. That's all right.
I mean,
history.
You do look like you could belt one out on the opera stage, though.
You know what? My forte is more karaoke, but thank you. Yeah, I'll tear up some mean karaoke. My wife and I do a couple of Phantom of the Opera duets. I've always been a big Broadway fan, so I'll knock out some Phantom of the Opera. That's about the extent of or the maximum that I go.
After conquering the White House, maybe conquer Broadway.
Who knows? Might make a good Broadway, so it might make a good opera. Might have to produce it into an opera. Great American, a great American tale of passion, power, and intrigue.
I'm intrigued. So, what were you doing overseas?
So I worked inside I worked in the oil and gas industry primarily, and so I had titles like director of security and special projects, a lot of security related titles, because there wasn't really one that encapsulated everything that we did. But essentially, I worked between private international oil companies, the U.S. government, U.K. government, Dutch governments, for the most part, Australian government, and then the countries in which they operated, and worked with the intelligence and defense and law enforcement agencies, and focused on geopolitical and transnational threats, particularly focused on energy security, critical infrastructure protection, and those were threats that would manifest from armed conflict, civil unrest, organized crime, terrorism. So it was really, working with all of those entities in order to ensure the flow and supply of oil and gas. And it got into some of the offshore and renewable energy, things like that. But basically, critical infrastructure protection, but evaluating and always analyzing the geopolitical and transnational security issues around those things.
All right. I mean, it started off clear cut presidential candidate with the oil stuff, and then it took a turn to Sticco. Gene Sticco. Sounded like Bond for a second. So you've had a pretty exciting life out there. What made you even come back?
Well, I mean, I had a blessed life. I mean, I saw a lot in terms of how governments work with one another. I saw a lot about how our own government works. Ultimately, it came down to sort of making that decision. I've always said any good leader knows when it's time to sort of step back. And I had been involved in the contracting side of things, and I was doing more of the business development kind of things and less of the analytical side of the house. I was worrying more about, okay, I got to get the next client and all the rest, and it so just sort of lost its appeal to an extent. A lot of travel, a lot of time away from home, a lot of missing my oldest kids growing up and things like that. And, you finally take a step back and say, it's time to, it's a lot of wear and tear on the body. And you say, well, it's time to step back and let other good, competent people pick up the reins and run with it. You do your part, you do what you can. And then, sometimes when it's time to get out of the way.
Now, you mentioned learning about governments and the infrastructure, especially ours. Is that part of the reason why you're running for president in 2024?
Partly, I think there's always been a part of me that I never had an interest in being a politician. I've always had lots of people say, and particularly in the realm that I dealt with, where I'm presenting a lot of analysis on political issues and things like that. And people would say, oh, you should run for president. And I'd say, yeah, thanks. Great. And it's really been the last 8 years, let's say, that I take a step back and I shake my head and I listen to what's going on in the media, and you listen to the rhetoric and you see the divisiveness, and I know a lot of it is this political theater. And I just got to the point where I said, you know what? Like many people, I think you say we need an adult in the room, and we need somebody who is interested in governing from a service perspective, and ultimately that's what I think that we've lost as a country, and we've lost in our political system. And that's the reset button I want to hit. Is yes, this outsider who comes in, and maybe it's all just idealistic, but I still believe it's what needs to happen, is somebody who comes in and hits that reset button and says, stop. We are going to stop governing the people and governing their way of life, governing their daily lives, and we are going to start being of service to the people, and that government agencies need to be of service, and everything they need to do, everything they do, needs to be focused on that idea of what I am trying to achieve. How does this help the person that I'm dealing with, and how do the policies we establish really help everybody? Are you back? All right, I think we're good. Can you hear? You're on mute.
I don't know what happened there, but
I don't know either. Yeah.
luckily we got back. So,
So just
what,
a service focus, in getting government back on track. With this idea of serving the American people and not just putting agendas forward that are going to allow you to keep your job for the next 4 or 6 years.
so what else can you tell us of how a United States ran under the Sticco regime would look like?
Well, it all starts, like I said, with service. It starts with this idea that our agencies need to reassess what we do. We need to get back to looking at what they're supposed to do. What are the laws? What are the things that we have committed to doing in law? And let's make sure that we're doing those things. What are the principles of the programs that we're trying to implement, and are we implementing them with that intent? Um, are all of the actions that we're taking and the decisions that we're taking being taken in the best interest of all Americans? And let's face it, there's not a one size fits all for everybody. um
Right.
there's gonna be there, but if we can acknowledge those things up front, if we can build in and anticipate what some of those issues might be. There's always exceptions. All right, let's make sure we build account for those. So like I said, I think it's more about, and I hate to overuse the word, but that's what it is. It is really about this having a service focused um, attitude as we're going in. And I think right now, I think service to the American people is the last thing on anybody's mind. And I think there are a lot of it is power plays, it's agendas, it's you know individual motivations, individual desires, and things like that. And I think while you're not going to eradicate that from the political system, I think the role of president is to stand back and disconnect yourself to a degree emotionally from what you may personally believe, and then having to sit there and say, well, what is best then for the country? Without again trying to necessarily impose your own morals or your own opinion upon any group of people or particularly an entire nation. That you can lead from this position of empathy for all people and empathy for all positions, and just be effective at communicating those decisions.
Now, one of the biggest things right now that I see, just as a regular old United States person, what what do you plan on doing for the minimum wage issues? Now, most federal states are still at around $7-8 an hour. We know how the housing market is between renting and owning, and there's no way anybody can afford to have a family with $2-8 salaries in the house. What do you plan on doing for the people in the form of raising the federal minimum wage?
Yeah, and I think that's an issue that we really need more understanding of in a lot of ways. You're absolutely right. This day and age, $8 an hour isn't helping anybody. It's probably hurting you more than anything. Um, in one sense, I am against a federally dictated minimum wage. I'm much more on the side of states. You with me? All right. I think as president, my goal would be to have more of the states align first than the federal government coming down and dictating what those rates need to be. I think there is of course a massive difference, between making $15 an hour in Los Angeles, let's say, and making $15 an hour, somewhere in the middle of North Dakota. Um, so I think a lot more consideration needs to be given before there is a standard across the board federal policy on minimum wage. Now the federal policy may look more like a formula based upon local economies and costs of living and things like that. I think that's what makes sense for more, particularly your small business owners. Because again, a smaller business owner in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, um, is that's going to hurt them and their ability to create a sustainable business and create more opportunities because we're just jamming it down everybody's throat. Um, I think there's a case would be made. Somebody might say, oh, well, I make, $10 an hour in one city. I'm going to go to this other city for $15 an hour. But again, all of your expenses, go along with that. It's just, $100,000 a year salary in New York City does not go as far as $100,000 salary in again, in the Midwest and in some places or in a small town. So I think the federal role in a lot of ways need to look more like formulas than they need to actually be, a black and white number in a lot of ways.
Here's the website. We're going to get back to the website in just a second so we can take a look at just exactly what's your message on your website looks like and where we can find some of this information. But before we do, here's just a little bit of information from our sponsors.
Me and my team, whenever we link up, they're gonna be drink up. We still gonna relax and have few glasses when there's things to think about. Like I'm nice with the boss when I tend to the boss, and I'm not talking drink ups. So tell the bartender that tended the bar to please pass me a big cup up. And tell that waitress is waiting on us to put a little ice in it. Now watch the ice become weightless like the spaceships that I be sitting in. No wait and listen, no, they're waiting for that tropical twist that'll tickle your taste buds. Now taste some. Yo, I insist it's the drizzle.
You are hereby guilty of pretending to taste good. You are hereby guilty of pretending to be nutritious. You are hereby guilty of being garbage. Who can save us in these troubling times? Excalibur!
All right, I'm a fan.
Welcome back to Talking Junk. We have 2020. Thank you. We have 2024 presidential candidate Gene Sticco in the house. He's letting us know a little bit about what America will look like under his rule. This is his website. If you guys are wondering where you can find some of this information to take with you, sit down and read, indulge in the world of Mr. Sticco. This has everything you can seemingly ask for, even the luscious stash there.
It was
Look
a
at that
particularly good mustache then.
Under gun control, it says achieve balance to not unduly infringe upon the right of the people to bear arms while ensuring public safety. I have so many things in my way; it's like an obstacle course. All right. So with the gun control thing, we just seen Florida pass a non-carry, which is, a non-permit carry conceal, which has been happening in a couple of states for the past couple of years. What do you think about that?
So, putting on my presidential hat, if that is what the people of the state have decided through their elected officials, then I support that decision of the people to do that. I think we have to go back though to the overall, to the big picture of the gun debate. We have to look at, again, the intent of the Second Amendment, right? People needed the right to bear arms to keep the government from becoming tyrannical. We hear the arguments, well, the founding fathers could never have envisioned, 30-round, 50-round magazines and automatic weapons and all, and that's true. But on the same token, that is what the government has as well. And so in keeping with that line, I think the bigger issue, though, and what we see in all of these horrible tragedies that happen, is the mental health component, and is the component of both mental illness and the desensitizing of of our culture in so in so many ways. We are desensitized to violence. Um, Part of my strategy in addressing all of that, I don't think I can address gun control until you address health, and that is the physical and mental health of the nation. And to me, in a Sticco administration, I would actually move healthcare, um, and make healthcare a matter of national security. I think the physical and mental well being of every American is a national security issue. It impacts everything that we are able to do domestically and abroad. Domestically, it impacts our daily lives in things like gun control. Um, it impacts us on an international basis in our ability to maintain a strong military. You look at some of the numbers now, and it's atrocious. They say this only something like 20% of military aged individuals who are physically able to join the military. Um, so we need to make this a national security priority.
So would that mean universal health care? Free universal health care?
I think there is, again, that's something that I think there's a structure that can be put into place, um, for for um, for children. I think as a nation, as a society, we should be investing in children's health care through the education through their period of educating and entering the workforce. I think then at that point you're sort of weaned off of the universal health care, and we go into private health care during your working years. And then as you get into back into retirement years, then we get into social security, and or we get into Medicaid and Medicare, and all of that. We have the obligation to take care of both the elderly and the most vulnerable of our citizens. So again, not a one size fits all answer, but I think there is definitely a scalable model that we can go to that makes sense. I think it makes sense that we want to see our children physically and mentally well, as they are preparing to enter the workforce and be the leaders of the future. And I think it makes sense. And as a country, we have an obligation for the anyone that is disabled, and then as you get into your elderly and senior years, to ensure you have good health care, for everything that you have done for the life that you have lived, and allow them to enjoy that.
Okay. I 100% agree with you. Healthcare is a big thing, and especially the mental health of our children. It's something that is needed.
Yeah, and so and that's why I say I think the the gun debate then becomes much more manageable in any of those things that you want to do, any of those controls that we want to put into place in ensuring that people who have some sort of mental illness do not have access to weapons, becomes a much more manageable process at that point.
Right. Right. Now with currency taking turn the way it is, how do you feel about the formation of BRICS? Or brick? Is it brick? Not non-plural. Brick.
Brick. Enlighten me. Get the into
Brick. I believe it was Brazil, Russia,
yes,
India, and China.
yeah, gotcha. How do I feel about the point? That is a look. We, in so many ways, we've said for so many years we're not the world police. We're not. I think we've put ourselves.
That didn't stop us from acting like it, though.
It didn't. Well, exactly, and that's the problem. Look, a lot of this is a lot of these alliances are the result of our own, decades of failing of foreign policy, right? Not only decades of failure of our foreign policy, but also uh, decades of our own sort of form of colonialism. Let's face it, and spreading the American way. It's funny. I had this discussion with somebody not long ago. They said, well, we need to export the American dream. We need to export the American dream everywhere. I said, but that's not right for everybody. The American dream works in America because that's how we were structured from the beginning. That's how we, have been organized.
Right. It's the reason why it's not called the world dream. It's the American dream.
Right. You have to somewhat have an appreciation for the differences in cultures. And I'll give you an example. A lot of these companies, these Western companies that I worked for, so I'd go to India or Pakistan or countries in the Middle East or in Africa. And they would say, these executives in Houston or in DC would say, well, go over there and let me know, tell me what they're doing. Give me an assessment of how they are and because, from their perspective, it's all messed up. And I'd go over and I'd look and I'd come back. And they were always sort of surprised at my reaction to them. I'd say, is it how I would do it? Probably not. But in the context of where they are and what they're doing and the culture and the risks and the threats and the people and all of these things, they're actually doing a pretty good job. It works for them. So, I think when you're talking about BRICS and these alliances that have popped up, it is this case of us trying to Americanize, everything, everywhere we go. And I'll go back to
that was a good movie.
Yeah, but I'll go back to oh geez, what year? 2008. I thought Obama was great in that sense that he, I think we were at a time. I think he was again the right president at the right time to help us be a better global citizen. And so I think there is a way to certainly exude, or certainly, have American influence. We hold to our values. Yes, we have our values. We have the things that we have our interests. But I think in the same way, we still need to be better at being good global citizens. And I think when you look at something like BRICS, you look at even just China and Russia alone, and you look at these, relationships, in these pockets of threats that are building up against us. I think to a certain degree, it is more of a failure of a lot of our international policies, than it is, just people being evil and wanting to take over the world. Not saying that's not some of the motivation, but again, I think that motivation has, I think the entire situation with Russia, that was mishandled since 1991. And I could go on forever about that. But I think it's our undoing would be from our own doing at the end of the day.
Right. It most definitely is. Now, with that being said, with the American dollar taking a dip, with the the formation of BRIC, there's a lot being stated that the physical currency in America is starting to fade away. It's going to dwindle away, and we're all going to be digital. How do you feel about digital currency taking over?
I mean, I think it is I think it's natural progression. I think there's still way too many risks involved in it. I look at a country like Estonia. I think Estonia is going to really be the first nation that winds up leading, going to a full digital currency. Um, it's I think in principle, it's a good idea. I think there's too many still yet to be known unintended consequences that go along with that. Let's look. A big part of our problem now in banking and finance and economy, um, stems from this idea we just print money now. We don't back it up like in the old days with gold and all the rest of it. So, um, and there's a lot of issues when it comes to that. A digital economy, there is still a lot of the world that is not digital. There's a good amount of the world that does not have all of the access that we have on a daily basis. So we need to think about, as we rush to go to digital currencies, where does that put some of the nations that are already struggling, with a cash economy? What does that do to them? And at the end of the day, the risks involved with it, should somebody want to intentionally target a nation's economy, if it's all in the blockchain, then I guess there's one principle of saying, okay, well, it's going to come, it's already in there, it's already in the ledger. But think about it. You lose your Coinbase, you lose all your Coinbase codes, you're screwed. If we have that on a government level, and we're talking about a whole nation's economy, and somebody lost the piece of paper they wrote that down on, we're in a lot of trouble. So I again, I'm for it. I'm for exploring all those. Look, and there's a lot smarter people on that than I am, than me. But I'm always interested to have the conversation and have the ideas put out there, and see how we can advance them, but understanding really those consequences is going to be the trick to getting there.
Right. Right. Now, I don't want to take up too much of your time because we do know that you're a busy man. Uh, while we close out, why don't you tell the world why we should vote for Gene Sticco?
I'm looking for, I'm asking for Americans' votes, um, to send a message. I think there are more of us out here in America, who are tired of politics as usual, and that's kind of become an exhausted phrase. Um, we're tired of the political theater. We know it exists. We still accept it, though. And I think if people in their hearts are truly inspired towards change, then the only way we're going to get there is to vote for a non-traditional candidate, and to send that message to the establishment that the people still hold power. I think we have been lulled into a false sense of accepting the two choices that we have. And I think what I hope to represent, as I said when we started, is this idea that America, our government, needs to be focused on serving all Americans and doing things that are in the best interest of all Americans equally, without prejudice, without preconceived notions, without political motivation, that we just simply get back to a government of service, and one that can inspire everyday citizens to be of service to one another and to their communities in one way or another. And so that's why I'm running. That is my message, and I ask for your vote and consideration.
Well, thanks a lot, Gene, again for gracing us with your presence. It's been an honor, and we do hope to have you on again, win or lose or draw. We want to see you on. Maybe with your beautiful wife, we can get her to explain her profession and what she's done on stage. That would be amazing. But if you're up to it, we do have another podcast that comes out on Friday nights, just a little bit later than this. We'd love to have you on and maybe answer some questions of the people. We'll have some listeners call in and or send in some emails of some questions that they'd like to ask, and have you answer them live if you're up for it.
Yeah, absolutely, anytime. And I'm happy to do that. Happy to check in as we go through the process, and see how it all transpires live in action.
Yeah, well, we are definitely here for the journey, and we want to see what progression awaits you, because I know it's gonna be a ride. I hope to see you debating on that forum soon.
I hope so. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's very kind.
No problem. And there you have it, people. If you want to be the change, you got to get out and do it. Get out and vote. Get out and vote on all levels, in your town, in your city, in your state, certainly the country. Make sure to make your voice heard. We can't have the government back into people's hands if we sit on them. So go out and do what you got to do. Listen to the 2024 presidential candidate, Mr. Gene Sticco. Tune in next week. We have another great guest for you. And we love you. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, get out and vote. You are the change. Be the change. Stop being lazy. Don't blame everybody else. Blame yourself. We love you. Peace out.